evening. We are Coping Life Talk, or we are also from Misery to Mystery Life Conversation. I'm Dr. Lydia Istomina, and this is Scott Kiddle. Hi, Scott.
Good evening.
Unfortunately, good evening. We are missing today our co-host Candy Sheehan, who travels with her husband Mark through the whole United States to see her grandson. They did not see him since he was born, and now he is 6 months old. And this is a reality of this life. Many grandparents did not see their grandchildren still. And you and I are lucky because we just came back from visiting
Yes,
our wonderful grandchildren. And that's such a joy to be grandparents, right?
it is indeed.
Yes. And so today we decided to sweep and to swap actually our roles
We might
but
sweep too.
to sweep too, yeah, because we started from home, you and I,
We did.
back in 2020, and that was very intuitive and spontaneous and funny and not funny sometimes. Sometimes technology was not working well, but we continued and persevered. And the way it worked in the beginning, and to your total surprise and maybe displeasure, was my idea to challenge you because we titled it Coping Life Talk. And I thought, how to convince our viewers that it is live and also that it is not written and rehearsed. So I challenged you, Scott, at that time
Yes.
to just simply be unaware of not even the certain points and dots of the event, but simply the topic. So you were stepping in bravely for quite a while, not knowing what I am going to ask you about. How did that feel?
Oh, that was. There were moments that were a little stressful when I uh, tried to respond to a question and came up with nothing but air.
Yeah, that was quite a challenge. And I remember your face. And because of that, I thought since Candy Sheehan is not with us today, it's only fair if we will change our roles. And today, I open myself for this vulnerability that I have no idea what Scott will be asking me today. All I know is the topic, the coping with aging. And of course, each of us has a topic that we are strong in. And if I ask you, Scott, to talk about something for 20 minutes, you probably know that I choose this topic. So aging is not my strength, though I've read a lot and I took care of our mother, just like my sister did. And it's challenging, as well as many people who watch us today take care of their loved ones. So aging is something that we all probably feel vulnerable about. Aging makes us feel a little uncomfortable, and we try not to talk about it. What do you think, Scott? Is it something that you can talk about for 20 minutes? Non-stop?
I don't know about 20 minutes, but I certainly could have a conversation with you for 20, 30, 45 minutes. We'll see what happens, right?
Right. Okay, so let's begin. Coping with aging. So what is that thing? Aging.
So
You start.
coping with aging, and perhaps another way to frame it is how to age gracefully. Uh, we all we all think that we want to age gracefully. We don't want to be one of those cautionary tales like, oh, don't be like him. He is not aging gracefully. And of course, aging is it's a fact of life, and none of us can escape it. And we joke and we say, "Oh, I'm 29 and holding," and of course, the reality is those birthdays just keep coming and coming. And if you think about it, though, when the birthdays stop coming, then something bad has probably happened, right? So really aging is all of our experiences. And today, I think we want to have a conversation on how to cope with the experience of aging, and hopefully get some ideas, or at least ask some questions about how we can age gracefully. Now, Dr. Lydia, you're an ordained minister who serves a congregation that includes folks that are aging, and specifically folks that are they're nearing retirement age, or they're well into retirement, and so you have many years. I mean, you say that you don't really know a lot about aging, but really, I think that you have a lot of years of experience in caring for the spiritual needs, the emotional needs, and sometimes even the physical needs of older people. And of course, as you mentioned, you cared for your aging mom for approximately 10 years in our home. And I guess one of the questions I might ask is, what did you learn about aging from caring for your mom for all those years? And maybe that's kind of a tough question to lead out with.
Very good question. Thank you, Scott. And I probably should not say that I don't know much about aging because, to begin with, each of us is aging, and that's part of our life and reality. So I do know and I am aware that I am aging, and there are many signs of that. And since you mentioned taking care of my mother, and as well as I said, my sister took care of her through the end for the last 4 years. So, of course, those 10 years when I was able to provide care for her, she was much stronger. For quite a few years, she was able to even do laundry. But my mother was afraid of aging and of death. And so, because of that, I want to say that it was a research done. So since I'm a minister, and as you said, I have experience of taking care of people who are aging, just like I am, but older than myself. It is an interesting topic. And back in seminary, we had one of the students who was a professional in gerontology. And so when we shared, of course, she was approaching many theological questions from the point of gerontology. And at that time, of course, I had no idea of the depth of this topic. So at one point, I started reading more about aging. Since you and I both have all the members, and dealing with death, and dealing with people who are scared of death, I've learned that it is such a term that is defined as FOGO, FOGO, which is a fear of getting older or getting old. And interestingly enough, since now the name Pfizer is on everybody's ears, back in 2014 it was a research done, and 87% of the responders admitted that they had fear of aging. Interestingly enough, they did not have a fear of death, but all of them had fear of aging. Imagine, only 13% of Americans are not afraid of getting older. And I'm, of course, probably, if I was among of the responders, I will end among 87%. So I'm guilty as all those people. Probably at that age, I will end in that group and maybe even increase the number. But what is interesting that FOGO, fear of getting old, is a certain anxiety, and people cannot get rid of those thoughts of getting feeble, getting weak, not being able to take care of yourself, not being able to travel, not being able to remember. So let's go through the whole list of what it means to get old. So what I understand, the fear of getting old is getting back to my father, who was a very strong man, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And I remember how visiting him, we were in the backyard of that apartment complex, and he met one of his friends who was a very famous journalist back in Ekaterinburg, Russia. And it was clearly a sign of decline on his face. And my dad talked to him and asked him questions about how he was. He learned quickly that his friend had a stroke, and somehow maybe either dementia. At that time nobody knew about Alzheimer, and so he was not adequately responding to questions, was looking kind of unsturdy on his feet, and not answering questions correctly about his own life that he used to know so well. So when he left, I remember my dad says, I can face anything, but I cannot face mental decline. I would rather die, he said, than I would not remember who I am and what I am and what I do and who is my family. So let's talk a little about that fear, because you and I both have situations when we dealt with our members who are losing memory. So, do you think it will scare you if you knew that at one point you will be not as sharp and not remember things?
Well, I had a moment at work a number of years ago that that brought a little bit of fear into my heart. I work in IT and do a lot of really technical things, and so I was heads down for several hours on a technical matter, and someone came into my cube and asked me a question. And to my horror, I could not put words together very, very intelligibly to respond. And I was struck by that. I thought, oh, here it is. You know, this is the cognitive decline that's entered into my life. Well, after further reflection, I realized that because I had been spending 2 hours using one part of my brain, very highly focused, and then now someone comes along and wants me to use another part of my brain, my context shift from the programming to the conversation was, as I now describe, inelegant. And so I have not had such a similar experience, so I just chalked that up as being a one-off type of situation, and I recognized what was going on, but it made me conscious of the potential for cognitive decline. And I have a family member who I believe is experiencing some dementia now, and that dementia is increasing, and it's really sad to watch. I don't observe it every day because the relative is at quite a distance, but it's pretty sad to watch. And am I afraid of that? I have concerns for it. But I think my concern would be even more for, I guess at one point, you know, if you're having cognitive decline, you go through a period where you recognize, I don't have it all together. I don't have control over the domains that I had control over before, or perhaps I'm not as effective in my performance in those areas. And And if I'm not as effective, then I don't feel as confident. I don't feel as good about how I'm performing. And that can be very frustrating if you have been pretty proud and happy with your level of competency in the past.
Interesting that you started. Yes, thank you for saying that. You started with a question, not a question, but a kind of a statement that we all talk about aging gracefully. And so my question, and maybe that's what feeds that fear of aging for many people, is like, how can I gracefully age if I won't even remember who I am, you know?
Mm,
So I think the fear is of becoming completely dependent is
mm,
hunting many people. And of course, as you mentioned, taking care of my mother when she became totally, like 100% dependent on all of us. And her circle of friends shrunk, and it became only the closest family. And that becomes, I think, what feeds the fear of those who become caregivers is that two levels. First of all, oh my goodness, I'm the only one, or there's such a small group of people who are able to help. And that's what I think was very hard on my sister and her husband at the end for 4 years, and
yeah,
especially for this year and a half of COVID, when you cannot have more caregivers coming over, masks, and all these
right.
limitations. And that also to tell your mother that that's why it's so hard. But of course, the quality of care of our loved ones should not suffer, on one hand, from our limitations. But when we, and luckily my mother did not lose her mental capacity. She
Right,
had some slight maybe memory loss, but mobility was the
right,
huge issue. And so imagine when you have your full-time job and then you have to take care 24/7 of a person who cannot stand up, who cannot sit up, who cannot practically take care of on any level of herself. That is another level of fear. First of all, it's like anxiety. Oh my, it's all on me and my husband. But also the fear that what if it is can be inherited. What if
yeah,
I become immobile, right? What if
yes,
my children and my grandchildren will have to take care of me? So that's what the fear is. And of course, that FOGO, fear of getting old, is hunting many people. And if I continue just a little about that research that was done by Pfizer back in 2014, what they did also, they analyzed how people communicate on Twitter and how
wow,
frequently Twitter users discuss the subject of aging. And the result was shocking because 62%, which is the majority of
hmm,
Twitter users, right, which comes, if you turn it into the numbers, it is 4.2 million tweets posted
wow.
about aging in the last 12 months, and they were all negative. So
Oh
imagine
my,
if you
yeah,
have
yeah,
already fear of aging, getting old, the pogo, and then you are on Twitter and all you see, all these tweets are negative, then your anxiety will naturally go up. But if you
yeah,
allow me, I will share with you why my fear and anxiety of aging were how they started. Not even when I took care of my mother, but when I was young. I mean, it's a surprise. But back in Russia, I was always in all these holistic approaches and non-traditional. Some yoga at that time was not yet popular, and of course, all kind of everything you put into your mouth. I've learned later that term that is points at people who read something about what is healthy and they start immediately using that. So I'm one of those people. So at that time, I watched a short program about a lady who was 77 years old, and here I'm like 21, maybe 22. And I hear her testimony. And of course, you hear her age and you look at her face, and she looks like maybe 47, like 30 years younger. And she says, the secret of my youthful appearance. And tell me, what woman will not buy that? At 21, I just went first time to get my facial. And this beauty specialist asked me about my age, and I said, I'm 21. And I was sure I looked so young. And she says, oh, I thought you were 25. And so, oh, I was so shocked. So that fear of aging was planted in me. My face looks older than I am physically. And so naturally, watching that program, I paid attention to every word this woman said. And as a result, I've learned her secret. So her secret was that she did not eat any meat. Beef, nothing. All she ate were nuts, like walnuts. And I thought, okay, at least we don't have meat on the market, but definitely I could find nuts. And so I became so nutty about those nuts. And she said something very important. But when we get excited, at least I am, you don't pay attention to details. So later I watched again that video, and I've learned that she was talking about four walnuts a day. I had like a scoop every day. And since, you naturally get hungry, I had even more. Until one day, I ended in the emergency room with my pancreatic inflammation, and I thought I was just dying. So you see what people go into those extremes out of fear to become old. And I'm one of them. But that gave me a lesson that being that orthorexic, which means a person who will eat anything that is pronounced to be healthy, and including nuts or any grass, like my mom was calling me, you're like a goat, you will eat anything. So that means that we will be absolutely healthy if we eat lots of this. So we tell people, oh, you just need to age gracefully. What is the mechanism? You need to provide people with some instrument to support it, right? So yes, it's easy to say age gracefully. And I've met lots of people who age gracefully, but not everybody. Yeah. So how do you act gracefully? How would you suggest that we advise our viewers to age gracefully?
Well, I think that aging is going to introduce a lot of change into your life. So some of the changes that come your way is your children leave home, right? You may have a career change. You may retire. You could have the impact of cognitive decline. You may lose mobility, sight, hearing, endurance. Some of these things. You might lose loved ones as you age, and finally, potentially lose some independence. And all of those things are forms of change, right? They introduce change into your life, and change, whether good or bad, creates stress, right? So I think we have to start understanding how to build our resilience. And in this program, from the very beginning, we've talked about the original title, I think, was Coping with Sudden Life Changes, right? And you made the wonderful point that coping is a skill, and it's a skill that can be learned and developed and refined. So that the coping mechanisms that are in your life need to be developed to cope with these changes that aging brings. I think there's a number of things that we can do to help cope, and one of them is focus on things that we're grateful for. One of the statements that I read was, the longer you live, the more you lose. And you lose people, you lose things, you may have to give up a job that you're not maybe not suited for anymore. And when you lose things, then life becomes more precious. The things that you do have in your life become more valuable to you. And so if we stop taking things for granted now, not just when we hit that magic retirement age or the mile marker of 70 or 80, if we stop taking things for granted, we'll begin to appreciate what we have now and enjoy what we have even more. That's one mechanism, I think, or one technique for coping with the changes that come with aging.
Yes, everything you said is very true, but I just want to go back to that fear of getting old, and interestingly, connecting it to if you eat healthy and if you do everything that is right. The fact is that it does not matter how much, like blueberries, for example. Blueberries has an anti-aging effect and antioxidant effect.
Sure.
Yes, and it's very good for your mental longevity. But regardless of how much or how many of those blueberries you eat, you continue aging. That's a truth of life.
Yes.
And so from being that a person who was afraid of getting old, I gradually started learning, looking at my members, at my friends, and some friends are like 10 years older, 15 years older, and I just realized that, wait a second, it is something about people who are older than me that I can learn from.
Yes.
Because at that age, as I said, I definitely had fear of getting old. But the secret I've learned that when we cross 50-year boundary, like a stepping stone, a mark, at 51, people become much happier as individuals and as people who are continuing getting older. But something changes in our perception of life after 50. So if you watch us today and you know people who are still under 50 and they are miserable and they are unhappy, tell them that aging can make them happier people. They just need to cross that 51, and as soon as we turn 51, it's something magic about that age that we become much happier people. The thing is, of course, that this happiness will not last through the rest of our lives. It might end. So don't have that illusion that as soon as I become 51 years old, I will be the happiest person alive. No, because when we start experiencing serious health problems or become disabled, of course, it will affect our happiness. But there are things that, when you, Scott, mentioned that aging gracefully, which is a great thing. So I think being happy is a part of that. So when I think we get older, something changes in our psyche, and we start paying attention more to things that are eternal, things that matter. So, for example, family. When we pursue our career and we push, and all it is about becoming more successful, getting better pay for what we do, succeeding, going up on our career ladder, then we rob ourselves from spending quality time with the family. And I think when we probably cross that age 51, then we start realizing, oh, I crossed maybe entered my second part of life, which is not necessarily related to aging, because we always talk about Richard Rohr, how he talks and teaches about the second part of life. So, and he says that the second part of life is not reached by all people. Some people remain through their end of life, in the first part of life, pursuing career, being self-centered, being egoistic, attending to their personal needs more than thinking about others, not paying attention to how they spend their time, and so consuming and consuming. And that those are all characteristics and descriptions of the first part of life. But the second part of life is an example of wisdom and calmness, acceptance, and also less judgment over others, and less consumption of goods and food. And so that's what I think makes us much happier when we cross 50-year boundary in our life. Of course, lucky those who live that long, right? But if you think about what makes us happy, what makes you, Scott, happy? I apologize that I kind of turned the table around, because today is your day to ask me questions, not my day. But but may I ask you a question? What makes you happy?
Oh goodness. Well, I have a lot of things that I'm happy about, happy for, grateful for. I have a wonderful wife, wonderful relationship with her, and she's my soulmate and my best friend. And I look forward to aging with her, with you. It's
that's you're talking about me.
yes.
Well, yes, and I think it's a blessing if people have a person, a friend, or spouse who is the best friend, or children, or colleague, or neighbor, and that's one of the secrets of aging gracefully, yes, like you stated it. But also, I think it's a certain position, certain view on life, that when we expect less from others but do more, and I think that certain disposition of the heart to make other people happier, healthier, helping others to with advice, or simply just accepting people. I think that makes us happy, because in the first part of life we are focused on what makes us happy.
Yeah.
And that's what we become so miserable, because the more we consume of events and the goods and the money and travel, then we start sensing that gap, that void. And it's important that at one point we start understanding that those who give, people giving to others, become much happier. But so here it is, I found geriatrician Louis Aronson, who talks about aging. He points that most older people rate their health as good or excellent, because not because they are 100% healthy, but because they can still do things that matter most to them and to others. And I think if starting with us, with ourselves, the fact that we just came back from a trip, that when we traveled by air, we traveled by car, and each of us admitted what a blessing it is to be able all those things still, right? Because some people at our age already have some arthritis, have some mobility problems, and we both saw in the airport people in wheelchairs. but
Yes.
what a blessing it is when they have their family members around who help. And so that's what I wanted to say today, that age is not necessarily pointing at the problem. Our disposition is.
Yes.
And also, of course, physical health. Like, for example, you lost your brother who was not even 50 years old to
Right.
ALS. And that's something that you cannot just beat because there is
Right.
no remedy yet. And it's not aging, it is a disease. And that's
Right.
what I think people, when we fear to get older, I think what we truly are afraid of is to become disabled. Because again, looking at all those researches of what are the characteristics of older people, and so for example, older people than 65, they have the most stable and optimistic outlook of all adults. So younger people feel sometimes how depression just is so overpowering, or social anxiety that is so typical for younger people. Somehow, the older we get, the more optimistic we become. Also, older people, what in that report I've read, report being happier with their relationships than younger people. What is that?
Mhm.
So is it because we are less demanding, or we are more understanding, or, and I hope it's not because we just take whatever is available, but I think it's because we are more able to forgive. And we also, like, since our program, our podcast is about coping, it's also how we resolve conflicts. We have some tools, right, we developed in our lifetime. And so aging, yes, comes with challenges, but it also comes with certain skills. And I personally know that I used to be so like a warrior. I will just jump into any conflict, and I feel like, oh, I just have to find the resolution. Now I kind of allow myself to step back when people argue and listen, and do not offer my advices right away because I'm not the wisest. But also, I've learned that allowing people to resolve their own issues is the best thing, because then they own it. Unlike before, I would just offer my advices and then people come to me and they blame me for giving them
Right.
the wrong one. So
Right. Right.
I think that tells me that um, I'm afraid, I'm not afraid of becoming older anymore, because I find every day something, and tell me if maybe I'm just faking it, because my favorite phrase, no, seriously, my favorite phrase is, oh, the new 60 is the old 40, or the new 80 is the old 60, which means that people back like 20 years ago, they looked older in the same age group. Am I right?
Oh, I think that probably depends a lot on your your DNA.
Not
I,
necessarily. I think the life was much harder.
oh,
People
absolutely. Yeah.
people
If you
worked.
go back 100 years ago, life was very much harder, and if you go back 200 years ago, life was brutal. So
Absolutely.
we, yeah, we are. I think healthcare is so much better, and nutrition available is so much better, and technological and medical advances make it possible for for the quality of life to be so much greater. Although I think we recognize there are things that we can do to shoot ourselves in the foot, so to speak. Right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, there are some later researches that, besides that, people had a more difficult life. Unfortunately, what I've read, for example, people in Hawaii, when Americans started coming, or foreigners started coming, stepping first on their land, they had a word that in their language means out of breath. So it's like people live out of breath all the time. And why?
Yeah.
What it means? That means that all those Europeans who stepped on their land, they were so eager to build, to plant, to do something, to create something. So the reason I say that is modern Americans living constantly in a hurry. So on one hand, our life is much lighter because we do not work in the fields like our grandfathers and grandmothers. I remember the picture of my grandmother that she's so skinny and she was losing hair, and I thought she's like maybe 67 on that picture. To my surprise, later I found out that on that picture she was hardly 40. So
Oh my
that's
goodness.
how
Yeah.
hard labor, being a woman on a farm, all this milking cows, planting, plowing, working really hard, made her age so fast. Plus, being under the sun, not resting, having multiple births. She had 12 children. So that's all affects our bodies and affects our minds. And so she lived surprisingly up to 85, but she did look older. So that's what they say now, that new 60s, old 40, I think is reflecting on people pay more attention to their health. Also, they exercise more. They take some supplements. They eat healthier. But what I think needs to be added on the top of that is some relaxation time, meditation time, also a gift of contemplation, which is not yet known for many, but it is becoming more and more popular. So that we need to just slow down, take a day to take a breath, and that's what. Since I mentioned that Hawaiian. Saying out of breath. We constantly run out of breath because we try to do so much. And I think when we become older and then we do not have young children, diapers, and young parents, so we have more time to spend on maybe journaling, taking long walks, kind of sitting at the table, having a nice conversation with friends or spouse, children. I think the advice is just to slow down a little more, and that will make a huge difference on our internal processes of aging, because we will allow our system to kind of recoup, rest, and analyze and self-reflect, and I think that is what happens when we become older. So gradually, as I said, when you talk about this aging gracefully, it is again having that optimistic outlook, and but coming to terms, first of all, that yes, aging is inevitable, but the good news of many scientists is, for example, I never knew that since studying, for example, another language is strongly recommended for all the people to keep their mind active and youthful. And of course, many adults will say, well, but it's a fact that children, they just catch new language on the go and learn the language. When the younger you are, the easier the new language comes to you. What I've learned, to my surprise, the best results in studying another language come to those who are older than 70.
Oh my goodness.
No, that's true. Something about that
Okay.
age. Yes, something about that age. And why? Again, because by this time, by all both hemispheres are developed totally, and it happens at 70. So at 70, and it's not because we have more time, and it's not because, which is also a factor, but majorly because our brain finally reaches its total maturity. So then, when we develop both hemispheres, and there is a balance between both of them, then we are more ready to study languages. And of course, it's not, if we approach it like children, like on the go, playing That's not how adult brain works. So the advice is, if you decide to study another language, which is a very good advice and very good approach to keep your mind healthy and alive,
Yes.
and kind of vital, then yes, approach your decision to study another language as an adult rather than as a child, which means use all your learning methods that and skills that you built up during your lifetime and apply. For example, some people say, oh, just learn oral skills in another language, just speaking. It's not true, because we approach another language, everything, with a certain expectation of learning some grammar, learning the alphabet. We need to understand what we are studying, right? So
Right.
just simply by playing in a sandbox with another adult will not work. But what we need to do, we need to apply all our learning skills to study another language, and that takes some writing and some reading and some speaking and in practice. But trust me, the outcome is worthy, because it helps with just simply developing those neuropaths in our brain that help us to stay youthful. And again, when we study something new that gives us positive feeling, positive feelings produce positive emotions. Positive emotions produce positive hormones, which is like almost like like people say orgasm hormone. Yes, true. When we are happy, that's exactly that hormone, which is a sexual life is kind of declining after a certain age, but it doesn't mean that hormones are not produced. And that's what we feel happier, because we do something that makes us feel good about ourselves. Learning new language, studying new instrument. Look at the back of my behind me. You see the accordion. For goodness gracious, I played piano when I was a little girl, but when I turned 50, I suddenly realized that I want to study accordion. And that is quite a deal. I spent 10 years studying the left hand, because the right one is like a piano, but it definitely makes me happy. When I take my accordion, it is something about becoming so proud of my new skill, that I understand the instrument, that I can play the music that I love, like tango or Latin music. Not perfect, and that's a key to our happiness when we get older. Let's talk a little about how to be accepting ourselves when we are far from being perfect. I think that's a main skill.
Oh, that's critical. Yeah.
That's critical, because when we are young, we are so self-critical. That takes us to depression. That makes us looking at others judgmentally, because we constantly compare ourselves with others. Am I good enough? Am I accepted? Can I become better than my friend? When we become older, and maybe that's what happens when we cross 51-year-old barrier, then we suddenly realize, well, it's not about succeeding in everything. It's about enjoying what we do, and also finally accepting ourselves for who we are. I still, if you hear me playing accordion, I suck.
Oh,
But I'm happy.
no.
I'm happily I'm happily making mistakes, and the funniest thing, I accept myself when I do that, and I just tell, well, I can start over. And again, I started studying Spanish. I do not move fast, but I told myself, well, you're trying, Lydia. That's okay, and it makes me happy. And so that gift of, you talked about aging gracefully. I think it's about simply showing yourself some grace and
Thank
accepting
you
your
for saying that. Yeah, I wanted to make that very point.
Okay.
That part of aging gracefully is in fact showing yourself grace, giving
Okay.
yourself an atmosphere of grace that you live in. Because when we're not gracious towards ourselves and towards others, we become negative and we become cynical, and it starts to our souls start to get a little toxic. and
Absolutely.
we're self-defeating. And this is,
Absolutely.
your the last few laps of your life should not be spent miserable.
Right, I agree. And also accepting the limitations. I think
Hmm.
that's what part of the wisdom that we can learn when we become older. Because, we can continue going to museums, we can continue going to concerts, we can continue going with our friends to restaurants. Of course, COVID allowed if it is no high transmission in the area. But still, we did it, and but it's not what makes us happy and gracefully face our aging. I think what makes us happy is the fact that we accept our limitations. For example, you see my glasses, right? I would
Yeah.
never in my entire life wear glasses to show that my eyesight is not perfect. But after I
Hmm.
experienced this huge aura, like a optical aura, when my
Hmm.
memory even just like stopped for probably 4 hours. I could not even remember the year because I blinded myself with the bright light during podcast, and that caused this migraine aura that I never had before. So I've
Yeah.
learned, okay, I don't want to ruin my eyes. I already got all these floaters after that burning my eye experience with the light. So after that, I just simply says, okay, Lydia, slow down, accept the fact that now you have to wear these Blu-ray glasses to protect your eyes. Another thing is hearing. I've met so many people, Scott, who, myself including, who are just embarrassed to admit that they do
Yeah.
not hear well. So hearing loss is a huge part of becoming older. And I hid it. I did not even admit that I did not hear well until I've learned that I'm losing a part of a conversation that is very important to me. So, what did I
Hmm.
do? I admitted the fact that my hearing is
Yeah.
declining. And I simply got this. Okay, I'll show you. I will show you this wonderful device. And I simply, but it took me 4 years to finally say that. Imagine how
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
are embarrassed of just simply accepting the fact that their hearing is going down. And then just like wearing glasses. My son told me, Mom, it is the same as wearing glasses. It's just correcting that. Nothing to be embarrassed. I believed him. But it is one thing to believe and another thing to really become comfortable. And I think that's what happened with us becoming older. And I thought, why did it take me 4 years to accept it? Because I think I entered a period of life when I'm not just 51, but I'm now 60, over 60. So I think we become more accepting of ourselves, and also we are so eager to be fully in a conversation, to be fully present with our
Hmm.
family, with our grandchildren. It is not worthy to lose part of what our grandchildren say or scream or whatever they do or
Yeah.
whisper. And I finally realized, what the heck? I just want to be present. I want to know what they say. I want to know what my members say. And luckily, my hearing is not that poor. But imagine if I did not get that hearing aid, then it is connected to lowering cognitive skills. So what people do not connect, that when we don't hear well, then it starts
Yeah.
affecting our brain, and then this is when the mental decline begins,
Right.
Alzheimer and dementia. So please, if you are still self-conscious about getting hearing aids, make a decision today. Go to audiologist, go to ENT first, get a decision that yes, you do have some hearing aid need, and then just get it, because then the whole life becomes so much like brighter in colors and sounds, and I think it's crucial. So that's another thing. So what else can we do to Age Gracefully. And I mentioned going through all this list of learning new language, starting playing a new musical instrument, meditate, become a volunteer. That's another thing. As we talked in the beginning, it's not all about me, but it's all about helping others. And when we start doing that, then our life become much happier. But also, I want to put on the screen that when I expected you asking questions about aging, I put it kind of a small required things that we need to have done without any exception. So check your blood pressure regularly. Screen yourself for colorectal cancer. Go to the doctor. Women need to have pelvic exam. Have a screening done for diabetes. Eye test, like I mentioned, my eye test. Hearing test. That's essential to be to age not just gracefully, but have this holistic approach to your total overall health, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And of course, women, mammogram, men, prostate cancer, and dental exam. You know what happened to me on the trip? I broke my tooth. And that was just like heartbreaking moment. But it's a reality. And what else can you do? So I think fear of getting old, FOGO, is because we do not want to feel ourselves vulnerable. We do not want to find ourselves in that moment when we are vulnerable, and people see that. But I think if we do all these preventative measures, we will postpone and decrease, minimize that vulnerability. But also the main thing, it's okay to be vulnerable, Scott. You know, I feel so much more in my skin now than I was when I was 16 or 25 or 40. So when you're in a full strength, but you're afraid to show your vulnerability, that makes you even more vulnerable. But now, aging, I started realizing, well, yes, I am vulnerable, but so what? I broke my tooth, I go to the dentist, and luckily medicine has so much more opportunities now to fix us up, you know. We become robotic people. But the secret is in accepting ourselves. So I'm sorry I took so much time and maybe did not let you ask me questions. Any questions you have before we end?
Well, I do appreciate that you shared as much as you did on how to cope. And really, what you have described about the development in wisdom and in experience and learning to accept your limitations. These are all part of. These are things that describe someone who is aging gracefully. And of course, the converse of that is, you were talking about feeling happy. There are too many people that rather than rejoicing in their experiences, they've become cynical, and they've become more critical, and less accepting of themselves, less accepting of others. And that's the kind of aging that we really don't want to experience. I love what you have described as graceful aging.
Absolutely. And I think two things I want to bring up at the end. First of all, have a plan. Sit down today, tomorrow, and just kind of focus on yourself. How do you want to live? And create a plan of healthy aging. And put there everything that is so important for you. So mobility. So then put exercising. Exercising no less than 150 minutes a week. Whatever exercise you like, whatever you do, dance, walk, bicycle, whatever you want to do. But also add another item. Just be cautious, because check your mats and the rugs in the house, your cords, because one simple mistake, can cause you several weeks of immobility. And the more we spend time in bed, the more muscle mass we lose. So just move, but move wisely. Don't push yourself, because remember, we brought up, check your blood pressure, check your stress level, and also always get a feedback from your children, from your loved ones. Like for example, if they, my mom, she wore stilettos till, I think, till she was 55. And one day, she was crossing the street and the truck hit her because she was not fast enough, and that truck disappeared, but she broke her shoulder, and guess what? That caused her immobility in the right arm. She had to do physical therapy. So just be wise, but absolutely move. Another thing, put on that plan, relationship. This is number one, but also you cannot put everything as a highest priority, but one thing after another, just put it on your plan. Relationship. Have at least one meeting a day with somebody you trust, somebody you love, and better not on the phone, but it's also acceptable. But try to meet with this person, maybe take a walk if your friend, or and of course if you have a spouse, you can walk with this person. But also if you have a friend long distance, call these people, listen to podcasts, ask questions every time, and it's absolutely essential, because that's also a part of communication. Read, learn, but also when you think about this FOGO, fear of getting old, finances is a huge part of our fear of getting old, because we have this anxiety. What if I won't have enough in my retirement? Should I die earlier? What if I cannot afford medicine? What if I cannot afford medical care? So put on your plan of healthy aging, financial planning. Absolutely, just everything that you can think of, put there. For example, how does your financial plan look like for 5 years, then for 10 years, how safe it is to withdraw money without getting penalized. Find a trusted CPA, and also save more and spend less. And luckily, that's another thing that makes us happy when we get older. We start spending less. We spend wiser. And I think that's also a great part of getting older. And what else am I missing in that plan? But the main thing, that accepting the fact, put it there in capitals, accept the fact that aging is a part of life. It should not be anxiety, but also put on that plan supplements. Everything that makes you healthy will support your aging. And cherish your family, keep in touch, but and then you will meet your aging and come in terms with this without any fear. And the older we get, the less fearful it looks to become older. So I wish you the best, and just stay young in your aging process, because it's not about how we look, but it's about how we perceive ourselves when we're aging. And that means accepting ourselves. Yes, accepting our wrinkles, accepting our broken teeth, accepting our declining hearing and our eyesight, and gray hair, and so and a growing waistline. But put on that plan of healthy aging weight control. So weight management is a huge part of not only our physical health, but also of our mental health and our mobility, because mobility affects our mental health, and our mental health affects our mobility because it stimulates us. So just keep this whole thing balanced. And I want to finish today, Scott, if you allow me. I want to share about my conversation with a health coach that I just had yesterday. And she gave me an advice and a work plan for the following months, to follow this metaphor of a wheel. And so each
wheel.
A wheel.
A wheel.
Yes, so,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
a wheel. And so a wheel, not a W-I-L-L, but a wheel. And so what it means that all this, what makes a wheel running and make it round, those spokes.
Spokes.
I know you corrected me. So spokes. And they should be of the same length, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, it won't be a wheel that is round, but it will be a square, a rectangle, or something. But so everything that makes us humans, which means physical activity, our speaking ability, our mental work, our memory, our relationships, our financial health,
Spirituality.
our spirituality, contemplation, our sexual life, everything that is a part of that wheel, our eating habits, everything we do, volunteering. So it should be a balance between how much we take in and also how much we give to
Give
others.
out.
And if it is all balanced, then our wheel of life will be round, and then we will be moving faster and safer. And that's what my advice is. Just do the inventory of your life today. Work on your plan of healthy aging, but also put that wheel on the picture and create the spokes and name them. Your eating habits, your weight, your blood pressure, your sugar level, your physical exercise, financial health, your relationship, anything that is important to you, put it there and be sure that it is all balanced. And then let's continue on our journey using that vehicle. I love you all and I'm wishing you the best. And thank you, Scott, for preparing your questions and putting you in the spot. But it's a good evening, so God bless you all. We will
God
see you
bless.
next week. And our next conversation, our guest will talk about sleep deprivation, which is a huge problem that takes us back to that Hawaiian saying that Europeans live out of breath. And so it's like constantly climbing somewhere
Yes.
where there is very low oxygen. So keep everything balanced, and let's wait for our next guest who will be teaching us how to sleep better. God bless you all.
God.
Bye.